Yes, give it up, give it up.
Can you guys hear me? Yes.
All right, yes, so without further ado, World Cup champion, Kristine Lilly.
All right. So, for all you young people, I played on that team that Carly Lloyd plays on, Alex Morgan plays on, Rose Lavelle. All the parents in the room, you guys remember, right? Yeah. Well, it's great to be here. I mean, I look around at you guys in this room, and this is exciting. When I was your age, even here to this age, I didn't have a club like this. When I was your age, from 2nd to 8th, any 2nd graders out here? Oh, there's a couple, okay. And any 8th graders? Okay. So from 2nd to 8th grade, I played with the boys because there wasn't girls teams to play with. So when I was growing up playing, it wasn't like, oh, I want to be on the national team, I want to be in the Olympics, I want to be in the World Cup, because it didn't exist. So when I was playing, I just wanted to play. And the fact that I was able to play with the boys was something that was really great for me, because in a time when there wasn't much girls sports, I didn't get a lot of negative comments. I wasn't like, oh no, you can't play, you can't do this because you're a girl, you can't do this. All the people that I was surrounded by were like, sure, you can do this, let's just ask. So I had an older brother who taught me one thing, and that was that he made me believe that I could do anything. And little did he know that his tagging around little sister, following him around wherever he went, and him letting me play football in the backyard, soccer in the backyard, all the sports with his friends was probably one of the biggest pluses of my career. Because at any time if he said to me, no, you can't play or you can't do this, I would have been discouraged. But he literally opened the door and said, you can come play. But he had one rule. You can't cry. And I think he would have said that it was a little brother or a little sister. It didn't matter, I was a little sister. But he's like, you can't cry. I was like, okay. But do you know how many times I wanted to cry? A lot. Not because I did something wrong, or this because I lost. I wanted to win, but I held it together. I was like, no, he can't cry because then he won't let me come back. So that was like my first opening, to knowing that I could do anything if I wanted to. And my brother was that first lesson. And then after 8th grade, I went into high school, and then they didn't have a freshman girls team, but they had a freshman boys team. And at that time, my parents were like, hey, listen, if you want to fight and play with the boys, you know, we'll fight that for you since there's not a team. I said, that's okay. I go, let me try out for the girls, and we'll go from there. So I tried out for the varsity, and I was fortunate enough to make the varsity and played 4 years for my varsity team. And that world opened up for me, because now I was around people that looked like me, that wanted to play the game, wanted to work hard, and that was a blessing. And I grew up in a small town in Wilton, Connecticut, and we were lucky enough to win 3 state championships. So the whole winning thing started then, where I was like, this is kind of fun. You know, this losing stuff, not so happy with, but the winning was fun. And then when I was 16, the video said 15, but when I was 16 was when I made the US team. And that changed my life forever. And I think you might think for different reasons. You might think because I won World Cups or I won Olympic medals, but it was more so, it changed my life because I really was around people that were like me. I know I've talked about it a little bit with the boys. I was different there. Came to the high school around girls, but not everybody was so gung-ho on soccer. And then I went to this national team, and my first trip was to China. So I got asked to play for the regional team. Now it's different. I mean, I don't even know how it works nowadays. I'm catching up. My daughter's in this stage, so I'm trying to figure out how it works. But I made the state team for Connecticut, and then from there I made the regional team, so I represent the East region, and then from there I made the national national team, which was the U19. And they didn't compete. You got a piece of paper that said you made the team and a little pat on the back. And I was like, all right. But then from that tournament, that's when I got picked for the U.S. Women's National Team, and the coach at the time was Anson Dorrance, who's still the head coach at University of North Carolina. And I remember being in the room, myself, Mia Hamm, you ever heard of her? She's all right. Julie Foudy, I know you hear all her on the broadcasting, and Joy Fawcett. And we were in this room, and they're like, okay, so we want you guys to join the U.S. Women's National Team, and we're going to go to China in 3 weeks. And I sat there, I was 16. And I looked at him like, well, I have to ask my parents. So I remember calling home, like, Mom and Dad, I got asked to join the U.S. team. They didn't know anything about soccer. They grew up in New York City. My dad played stickball and all this. And I said, like, you know, they asked me to join this team and to go to China. And my parents were like, okay. And I'm like, you're gonna send your kid to China? You don't even know anybody. I couldn't believe they were so like, oh, that's okay. So I was so scared, to say the least, nervous. Plus, I'm a homesick kid. So the fact that I was gonna be gone for 2 weeks, I was like, oh my gosh. But I was really nervous to go on this trip. But when I joined this group of women who all the girls were in college or out of college, and when you're 16 and they're 20-something years old, you think they're really old. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And I can remember my first practice. So you guys get nervous, right? We all should get a little nervous, it's good. I was like extremely nervous. I just wanted to make it through the practice without passing out because the game was so fast, the girls were so big and strong, and I'm like, okay, you can do this, you can make it through and have your feet on the ground and be okay. So I made it through the first practice and I was like, okay, this is gonna be okay. And then the first game came. And Anson had myself, Mia, Joy, and Julie, we sat at the bench, where we should be, on the bench watching. And I remember sitting on the bench watching the game, and I'm looking at these players out there, April Heiners, Michelle Akers, Karen Jennings Guevara, and Shannon Higgins. And I'm like, holy cow, what am I doing here? Like, how am I possibly gonna make this team? And then the second half came, and coach was like, okay, you guys are in. I'm like, okay, we're in. All right, here we go. And I know it's not the most important thing, but I scored a goal. And I'm not saying that's the most important thing you can do in the field because there's so many different roles that are so important to play the game. But when I scored that goal, and it was pretty nice, it was like a volley, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. So the lesson behind this little message is, it's not always doing everything perfect all the time and get those confidence, but it's doing one thing that you're like, oh, okay, I did okay, and I can do this, I can do this. So after I scored that goal, I was like, okay, I can contribute, I helped this team win. Now I gotta figure out how to maintain and stay on this team for 23 years, which I did. And it was really just a moment where I was scared, I was nervous, intimidated, probably one of the smallest players on the field, and I didn't know where I belonged. And when I did something, that goal changed and let me know that, you know what, you can do this. So from that moment on, I played 23 years for the national team. I played 5 World Cups and 3 Olympics, won a bunch, lost some, but became a part of a team that taught me more about how to be as a person than necessarily trying to win World Cups and gold medals. And it was a collective job together that we did it each and every day at practice. I think that really made the strength of our national team. There are teammates that I played with from, you know, Carla Overbeck, now the current players, Abby Wambach, Alex Morgan was coming in when I was leaving, Carly Lloyd was in when I was there, Megan Rapinoe was in when I was there. So those 3 players, I crossed over a little bit. But the mentality and the work and the, I would say, trust and respect that we had on each other, for each other on that national team is the reason why this national team is still so successful and why we were in the past. So there's so many elements of that team that I love, and the players that I play with that I love, that I want you guys to know that each one of you is your own person. You don't have to be like the person sitting next to you. If you're a defender, you don't have to be scoring the goals to know that your role is important. If you're a player that doesn't get a lot of playing time, you're an important part of that team's success. So you have to understand that. You don't always have to accept it, because if you're not, if you're on the bench and you're not in, you want to try to get into the game, which I would hope you want to feel, but you have to do it. Even if it's something you don't like, you've got to do it because you're a part of the team and your role is extremely important for that success. Because you don't want to be the player sitting on the bench like this. I should be in there. You know, you want to be on the bench cheering your teammates on and working as hard as you can in practice to not only make yourself better, but to make your teammates better. There is Anson was our coach, and he called the starting group the starters, and he called the team that wasn't starting the reserves. Not sure that's such a great mentality, but it worked for our team. And what I loved about it is the starting group always wanted to do what they could to make sure that reserve group could get in the game. And I can remember Anson telling us at halftime of one game, and he's like, ladies, you got 15 minutes. You got to score 2 goals so we get the rest of the team in. And you wouldn't believe how excited our starting group was to want to do this. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to score goals. Like, hey guys, we got to score so these players get a chance to play. And those are the kind of stories you don't really hear or you don't see, but those are the reasons why the women's national team was successful. It was an unselfish group that wanted, to be successful, so we had to do whatever we could to make that happen. So when you guys are watching and you're seeing the highlight videos and you're seeing these incredible players doing these wonderful things, you also got to know that at practice and in training, there's so much hard work that is being done to enable them to do this. And they're doing it together as a team to be the best that they can be and the team can be. So there's so many wonderful elements. And then and the other part of it is we had fun. You guys still having fun playing? Yeah. You promise? Yeah. Candy cane's better or soccer? Oh, really? Come on. But it's real important to keep the fun in it. I know your coaches do the best they can to try to balance the training and to make it in a fun environment to keep you guys wanting to come back. Because that's what I'm doing now. I'm coaching and trying to find that balance is difficult. But you guys, your job is to work hard. That's what you got to do. You got to work hard. Every time you step on the field, you don't have to spend 6 hours outside the backyard. You spend an hour getting good training out of it, and that's what will help you become better. And the last thing I'll touch on before, we might have a couple questions if we have time, is your comfort zone. Who can tell me what your comfort zone means? Yeah. Yes, okay, so your comfort zone is when you're like, I can do this is easy, do a little foot skills back and forth, it's easy. So the most important thing also is to get out of that comfort zone. It can be a little scary. For me, I was homesick. Traveling was my uncomfortable area. I was so homesick for the first, I would say, 5-6 years on the national team. And so I was constantly always out of my comfort zone. And so when I got on the field, that was the place I felt most comfortable. And then I had to continue to try to be better, so I had to keep getting out of the comfort zone. And a lot of times we do that with speed, with our touches, with our speed of play, playing 1 or 2 touch. If you play 3 touches, try to do 1 or 2. So always try to keep rising, getting out of that comfort zone. So when something feels easy, try to figure out how I can make this a little bit more difficult to get yourself in a better spot. Does that make sense? Yeah? Anyone a lefty out here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's pretty good. I'm a lefty, so I always look for the lefties out there. You gotta work that left foot. You gotta work that weak foot, ladies. You gotta work it. But it's really just wanted to share a little bit of a story about my career. I think we have a couple questions we can get to. All right, and then we'll have some time to take some pictures. And parents, if you guys want to take pictures with me, I'm cool with that.
All right, so it's gotta be coming close. All right, so we had a lot of submissions for questions for you, Kristine, and a few girls I think are going to ask them, but I compiled a small list. First, general, and if you had a question and I grabbed you, you can come right up here. All right, if you'd like to ask your question, come on over. But before you guys get them, some of the other questions that I compiled were, was it harder to make the national team or to stay on the national team, and why?
That's it. I would say it was harder to stay on the national team because when I made it, I didn't even know it existed. So I wasn't really trying to make it. I was just playing. So I think once I got on the team, then I was trying to figure out how do I stay here. And back in the day, we didn't have clubs, so I was doing a lot of training on my own. And I think we talk a little bit about confidence, how you can build your confidence. It's really pretty much repetition of doing something over and over again to make you feel comfortable, and then you build those confidence up. So I used to train and we had a big field house in my high school, And I used to go put my Walkman on, which now you guys are just your phones, listen to music, and I would spend a half hour, 45 minutes kicking the ball against the wall. Right foot, left foot, laces, inside the foot, the ball, come back, work on turning. So basically I worked, all I could do is my technical work because I didn't have a lot of people to play with. So trying to figure out how to maintain on the team was really the hardest part for me. And then the other bottom line is the backbone to my career was my fitness. So obviously soccer, we gotta run a lot, right girls? So you gotta be fit. If you wanna stay on that field, you gotta be fit. So I did a lot of running, and we had different training regimens that we had to do, whether it was cones, 120 full field sprints, or other things. And I just made sure I was fit because that was, for me, that was the one thing, or for any player, that's the one thing you can control is your effort and your fitness. So I really made sure I handled that pretty well.
Excellent, thank you. Next question is from Brielle, who is one of our 2009 players.
What made you want to start playing soccer?
That's a good question, Brielle. Thank you for asking. So when I was 6, my soccer team was light blue. I remember that. But the thing I loved about soccer the most were the oranges at halftime. There's no doubt that I really love that. I would see how many I could eat at halftime. And I used to put in my mouth and pretend I was like a boxer, you know how you put the oranges in there. So really what got me into soccer, besides my brother playing, was the oranges. And I couldn't wait for halftime. And then I would hopefully try to be able to run after I eat all those oranges at halftime. Do you guys do oranges anymore? No. We gotta bring it back. I know the parents were like, no, we don't want to bring snacks. So that was really what I loved about the game. And then after that, it was being on a team and being around my teammates. That was really something I loved. And I know you guys on the road, traveling together, or just chatting is really the fun part of being on a team and playing the game. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you.
All right, next question is from Piper, who is also a 2009 player.
When did you realize soccer was going to be your full-time career?
Okay, that's another good one. When did I realize? So, when I was 16, I was on the national team, so I was a junior in high school. And then we finally found out that they would have the first Women's World Cup, which was in 1991. So in 87, I made the team, and the first World Cup's in Iowa. So the first World Cup, that was 4 years later. So we played the first World Cup, and we won that. Woohoo. And after that, it was kind of questionable. So FIFA was the governing body of all soccer in the world, put this event on, and they didn't really know if it was going to work, you know. So they were like, this is a trial run. We played 40-minute halves. So this is the deal. We played 40-minute halves because they didn't think that girls could run that long. But we played game, day off, game, day off, game. So we played 3 games in 5 days. So much for the girls can't run, right? So after that, we didn't know if there was going to be another World Cup. So I was a junior in college when that World Cup came. So I took off a month from school, and I was doing homework during the World Cup over here. And we played it, and then we all went back to school, or the other girls that were older went back to jobs, and we all were kind of just hanging out waiting to see what was going to happen. And we found out that there would be another World Cup in 1995, and then we soon found out that they would have the Olympics for the first time. So 1996 was the first time they've had women's soccer in the Olympics. So when that happened, I was like, okay, so maybe this could be something that I can do. And I remember when I graduated from college, I signed an endorsement deal with Adidas. And so they were pretty much my support throughout my training for my whole career. And obviously now these girls are now having a lot more sponsors and getting paid from US Soccer that we didn't have in the beginning. We weren't getting paid until 1995. So there's a lot of change that is. But I think after that second World Cup and having the Olympics, I knew that this was something I wanted to continue to do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, a couple people got cold feet, I think, so I'll ask my questions for them. One that a couple people put in was, if you could talk to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself regarding your love of soccer and getting where you made it?
I would tell myself, don't be so sad when you're away from home. I think I would say enjoy more of the process. Obviously, when you're in it, you're so focused on making a team, getting on the field, helping your team win. And I think just kind of enjoying it more. And I think that's hard to do when you're in it. But overall, I would just tell myself, everything you're doing is gonna pay off. And I don't mean just because I made the national team and won World Cups, Olympics. Whatever you guys are doing right now is gonna help you. It's gonna help you in whatever you choose to do. So don't ever think it's a waste of time. If you don't make this team, don't think that wasn't worth the effort. It's always a learning process. You're always learning, and it's always making you stronger in whatever you do. So I would just tell myself, what you're doing is gonna help you in the end.
She got brave finally, so.
Yes, so you got out of your comfort zone. I love it.
Yep, Claire's and oh wait.
What helped you stay strong through challenges and setbacks, and how'd you handle them?
Well, my teammates. I would say, any kind of setbacks and challenges you had when you're on the road, and especially on the national team, you're in hotels with each other. All you have around is your teammates. Granted, my support system, my parents and my brother and my friends were a huge support. And what I realized too is to surround yourself by people that want you to do well. If you got people in your group that are saying, why are you going to soccer? Why are you doing this? Oh, let's do this. No, don't do that. Don't train. Those are people that don't want you to succeed. If you want to surround people that say, oh, you're going to soccer, that's awesome. When you're done, call me. You want people that are really going to build you up. So when things were tough, I'd go to the teammates that really would, that I felt comfortable talking to when the hard times happen. Because let me tell you, girls, even at the highest level, there are some really bad days. I know that you see these players and they're playing for their country, but there are hard times and it's not always as easy as it looks. So you have to find that support, and usually it's within your team and your family and friend structure that really helps you through the hard times.
Thank you.
All right, Kristine, I just have one question for you. You play for Anson Dorrance, right? And he's a huge competitor, right? And he talks about the competitive culture and all the time. What would your advice be for the girls when they're in a competitive team and they feel like they can't take that next step because maybe their teammates might look at them differently socially? So I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's pretty much what I was scared of my whole life, was to be different. And what I want you to say to you guys is be different. Go after what you want. Be different. Don't be like everybody else. Do what you love. Go after it. I remember after high school games, I would leave the field and I'd put my hood up and I'd try to sneak out because the reporters would want to come talk to me. And I didn't want to talk to the reporters. I was like, why do they just want to talk to me? We all played. Why are they focusing on me? So I'd always try to sneak out. But little did I know that I was given a platform to speak on behalf of my teammates and not just myself. So I really encourage you to be different. And when that happens, the people that believe in you and then your teammates that want to succeed like you, they're going to follow you. And then what did you just become? A leader, right? So you being different is going to create opportunities for you to be a leader. And that's what we need more of, girls like you. Being leaders, being different, wanting something, and being proud of yourselves. We joke a lot on the national team because we girls in general, we tend to not want to hurt each other's feelings. We're very caring and loving people. But on the national team, when we stepped out on that field, or at North Carolina for Anson, and we had to compete, if we didn't do our best, then we weren't helping our teammates be better. So we were almost hurting ourselves if we were trying to be nice to our teammate. So the harder I worked and the harder I competed was making myself better and my teammates better. And like I said, you're not always going to be successful. You look at players like Alex Morgan, Abby, Messi. They don't score goals all the time, but they keep trying to score goals because the more they do that, the more goals that will go in. So you have to keep competing. You got to keep trying because it's going to help you become better and it's going to help your teammates be better. And that's what's going to get you to the next level. And that's going to get you to where you want to be. And Anson at North Carolina continues to do the competitive cauldron, he calls it. And how he used to do it is we do 1v1s. And sometimes if this is a cone, it would be me. What's your name? Jess. Me and Jess right here, we do 1v1, so we try to dribble and try to pass the ball and hit the cone. And we would go do that for, I think it seemed like they were 3 minutes, maybe they weren't, but it seemed forever. And we'd compete, so if I beat you that, I'd have 1 win. And I do that 3 times, and if my record was 3-0, at the end, the answer would be, okay, ladies, what's your record? So if you were 3-0, it was like 3-0. If you were 0-3, it was like 0-3. Because you had to say those numbers in front of your teammates, and you wanted to have the respect. And if you had a bad day, you're like, gosh, they're gonna be so bummed for me. So the environment created responsibility for yourself, accountability, because you have to have accountability out there. You can't just pass the buck on to someone else. So when we would compete, you wanted to do your best to see if you could have a good score at the end of that training session. And then your name would be listed on the board of your point system. So if you're down the middle, you're like, okay, I gotta figure out how to get up there. And granted, sometimes you could look at it and lose confidence, but if you're like motivated, you're like, okay, how can I do this? And then that's where you go to your coaches to ask for help to get there, other teammates that are doing well, and how you can get better. So it's a great environment. And also in the same aspect, you can't take yourself too seriously. You can't just be hard on yourself. You just gotta look at it like, okay, that day, let's put it away, and then I got another day coming to do better.
There we go, we're back. Awesome, well, that was impressive. Let's definitely give Kristine another round of applause. That was great. Very info, very insight.